Welcome to Echo Crime YouTube channel. The rise of Belle Gibson. In 2013, a young Australian woman named Belle Gibson appeared to embody everything the modern wellness world adored: youth, hope, and healing. With her bright smile, minimalist lifestyle, and gentle voice, Belle became a symbol of resilience. She told the world she was dying of brain cancer, but miraculously surviving through natural remedies, clean eating, and positive living. She wasn't just surviving, she said. She was thriving. Her journey began online, with carefully curated posts showing smoothie bowls, raw vegan meals, and inspirational quotes about health and gratitude. Her Instagram handle, Healing Belle, quickly gained thousands of followers. She claimed doctors had given her only months to live, yet there she was, radiant and full of life. Her story felt real. It was emotional, authentic, and deeply moving to anyone searching for hope against illness. By 2014, Belle's influence exploded. She launched the Whole Pantry, a health and lifestyle app promising a holistic way to restore balance through nutrition and mindfulness. The app was an instant success. Even Apple took notice, featuring it as one of the first wellness apps pre-installed on their upcoming Apple Watch. Soon after, Penguin Books offered her a lucrative book deal. At just 23 years old, Belle Gibson became one of the most famous wellness influencers in Australia. She appeared on morning shows, in women's magazines, and at health expos. She told audiences that she had survived terminal brain cancer through nutrition, patience, and the power of the mind. Thousands believed her, especially cancer patients desperate for alternatives. But Belle wasn't just promoting herself. She presented her brand as deeply charitable. She claimed to have donated large sums of her profits to organizations supporting cancer research, sick children, and African maternal health prog. In February 2015, the Whole Pantry's team released a public statement claiming Belle was being unfairly targeted. They assured followers that all donations would be processed and that Belle's medical story was authentic. But behind closed doors, staff members had already begun walking away. They too had started asking questions, and the answers didn't add up. For years, Belle Gibson had been the face of wellness and authenticity. Now the truth was catching up with her. Her once flawless online persona was beginning to crack under the weight of her own lies. And soon, the world would discover that Belle Gibson had never been sick at all. By early 2015, cracks in Belle Gibson's empire were beginning to show. What had once been an unstoppable wellness brand was now under quiet scrutiny. A few journalists, skeptical of her vague medical claims and missing charitable donations, started to dig deeper. One of them was Richard Gilliatt, a reporter for The Australian, who noticed that no medical records of her alleged cancer treatments existed. Another journalist from Fairfax Media reached out to the hospitals Belle said had treated her. None of them had any record of her as a patient. At first, Belle brushed off the doubts. She told her followers that the hate came from jealous people trying to destroy her good work. On Instagram, she doubled down, posting spiritual quotes, pictures of clean food, and long captions about living in truth. Her fans defended her fiercely, but the questions didn't stop. Soon, her story was everywhere, not as inspiration, but as a mystery. Who exactly was Belle Gibson? Was she really a cancer survivor? And if she wasn't, what did that mean for the thousands who had trusted her advice? In April 2015, everything changed. Belle Gibson sat down with the Australian Women's Weekly for what was supposed to be a clarifying interview. But during that conversation, her carefully crafted world fell apart. When asked directly whether she ever had cancer, Belle hesitated. And then, finally, she confessed, no, none of it's true. It was a moment that stunned the world. The influencer, who had built an empire on surviving brain cancer, admitted she had fabricated the entire story. She had never been diagnosed, never received treatment, never cured herself. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Social media erupted. Fans who had once praised her now felt betrayed and angry. Many wrote long posts describing how they'd followed her diet plans, ignored medical advice, and spent months on her app and book, all because they believed her story was real. Meanwhile, the Whole Pantry app was swiftly removed from Apple's App Store, and Penguin Books pulled her cookbook from shelves worldwide. Her partnerships vanished overnight. The wellness industry, which had once hailed her as a star, now treated her name like poison. But the revelations didn't stop with her fake cancer. Investigators soon learned that Belle had lied about donating to charity too. She had claimed to donate 25% of her income from her app and book to various organizations, including children's hospitals and African charities. But none of them ever received a cent. Consumer Affairs Victoria, a government agency, launched an official investigation into her finances. They uncovered evidence that Belle had kept nearly all the profits from her ventures for herself. The report concluded that her conduct was misleading and deceptive under Australian consumer law. For months, Belle avoided the public eye. Friends and former collaborators described her as withdrawn and defiant. She reportedly told some people that she was the real victim, that the media had misunderstood her. In one interview, she claimed she had been misdiagnosed and confused, attempting to soften the blow. But the damage was already done. Behind the headlines, there was another, quieter tragedy. The people she had influenced. Many followers were cancer patients who had abandoned conventional treatments, believing Belle's diet-based healing would save them. Doctors and advocates began warning the public about the dangers of following unverified health advice online. The scandal ignited a national conversation about wellness misinformation and the power of influencer culture to manipulate emotions for profit. When investigators subpoenaed her financial records, they found that Belle had used her earnings on luxury goods and personal expenses, far from the humanitarian image she had portrayed. The authorities took her to court, marking one of the first major cases where a social media influencer was legally charged for deception in Australia. In the public's eyes, Belle had gone from healer to fraud in a matter of days. Her once beautiful Instagram feed became a timeline of lies, frozen in time, a digital relic of one of the internet's most shocking betrayals. But while her career was over, her story was far from done. The world was about to watch her face justice and see how the courts would handle the influencer who lied to millions. When the truth came out, Belle Gibson's world collapsed almost overnight. The woman who once graced magazine covers and stood on wellness stages was now the subject of an official government investigation. The same Australian public who had once adored her felt betrayed, not just by her lies, but by what they represented: the manipulation of trust in the age of social media. In 2017, Belle Gibson faced the Federal Court of Australia in a case brought by Consumer Affairs Victoria. She was charged with misleading and deceptive conduct, specifically regarding her false claims about charitable donations and health advice. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, lawyers, and members of the public who had followed her story. Cameras flashed as Belle walked in, no longer the confident influencer, but a quiet, subdued woman in simple clothing, her eyes downcast. During the trial, the prosecution presented detailed evidence. They showed screenshots of her social media posts, emails, and financial records that contradicted nearly every statement she had made. Charities she had claimed to support, like the Asylum Seeker Resource Center and the One Girl organization, testified that they had never received any money from her. despite her public promises. The most devastating part came when the court heard testimony from people who had followed Belle's advice. Some described how they had given up medical treatment, convinced that diet and positive thinking would heal them, as Belle had claimed. The emotional impact of those testimonies was undeniable and haunting. When the judge delivered the verdict, it was clear. Belle Gibson had deceived the public. The court found her guilty of 5 breaches of consumer law and ordered her to pay $410,000 in fines. A punishment meant not just to penalize her, but to send a message to others in the influencer industry. But the story didn't end with the verdict. Belle struggled or refused to pay most of the fine. Reports from 2019 showed that she had not made significant payments, even years after the ruling. Authorities eventually raided her property, seizing personal items to recover what they could. To the public, it felt like a fitting consequence for the deception she had built. Yet despite the judgment, Belle continued to live relatively quietly in Melbourne. Some journalists reported seeing her out shopping or dining, living an ordinary life while still owing hundreds of thousands in penalties. To many, this was the ultimate frustration, that someone who had profited from lies could move on so easily. The media's fascination didn't fade. Documentaries, podcasts, and Netflix's Apple Cider Vinegar, the Belle Gibson story, reignited global attention years later. They revisited how a single influencer could build a massive empire on trust, emotion, and the illusion of authenticity. The scandal became a case study for how influencer culture can distort reality, where photos and captions can outweigh truth, and vulnerability becomes a marketing tool. In classrooms, Belle Gibson's name began appearing in lectures about media ethics and digital accountability. Law schools analyzed her case as one of the first major influencer fraud prosecutions. And in online spaces, creators began adding disclaimers to their health and lifestyle content. A small but meaningful legacy of the chaos she caused. Meanwhile, many of Belle's followers continued to process the betrayal. For some, her lies had real-world consequences. She had inspired desperate people to believe that serious illnesses could be healed through smoothies and positivity. The realization that it was all fiction left many feeling angry, even guilty, for believing in her. As for Belle herself, she remains largely out of the spotlight. Occasionally, her name resurfaces in tabloids, usually when authorities attempt to collect unpaid fines. But she has never returned to public life, never rebuilt her brand, and never offered a full, unambiguous apology. Her story stands as one of the most shocking examples of social media deception in the modern era. Not because she fooled a few, but because she fooled millions. In a world where truth can be edited and empathy can be sold, Belle Gibson's story reminds us how fragile trust really is. Her empire was built on hope and destroyed by the truth.